You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 57. You're probably deficient. Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Hi there. Welcome to another episode. How's it going? I hope you're doing great on this hot August day. Have you uncovered your most commonly run algorithms this past week? I think it can be so powerful to just become aware of what's running on autopilot under the radar in your life. If you'd like some help upgrading and sticking with new algorithms that can ensure that your biological age stays younger than your chronological age, I would love to help you take control of your future and age on purpose so that you have more energy and bandwidth to put toward making the world a better place for my kids. Click the link in the show notes or head over to healthcouragecollective.com. Just healthcouragecollective.com. Today, we're going to talk about a deficiency that I think there's a good chance that you have, and I probably do too, and what to do about it. It doesn't have to be complicated or time-consuming, but a little attention to it now can prevent all kinds of major problems in the future. That's what we're all about here. Little things we can upgrade and be consistent with that change our futures by orders of magnitude. There's a biomechanist named Katie Bowman who I like to hear from. She started a concept called nourishes movement and has written quite a few books, including Move Your DNA, Movement Matters, Don't Just Sit There, Whole Body Barefoot, Dynamic Aging, and some others specific for women. She's a pretty cool lady. I heard this metaphor or comparison from her, so I'm going to run with it for a second. Okay, so I think we're all very aware that our diets are not as nutrient dense as they used to be, like for our mothers, grandmothers, great-grandmothers, and so on. Our soils are dangerously depleted, so produce grown today is not nearly as nutrient dense as it used to be. We know that a peach or tomato picked today has far fewer polyphenols, minerals, and vitamins than peaches and tomatoes picked 50 or 100 years ago. In episode 51, Calorie Casino, I talk a little bit about how it actually tastes less tasty. Like tomatoes taste less tomatoey and peaches taste less peachy. Even chickens taste less chickeny than they used to. It's the craziest thing. Anyway, we get fewer nutrients from the same crops and they're bathed in toxins, which is another story. And much worse, most people don't even eat produce anyway. There are so many convenience foods that are horrible for us. We are overfed but undernourished by all of these so-called advancements in food. We know this to be true. There's a price to pay for all of this convenience, and that price is bodies that do their darndest to keep going but slowly lose function. Be it chronically low energy levels, high blood pressure, weakness, memory problems, or pain. Just like we have all of these depleted foods and convenience foods as what is normal in our culture has gotten a lot more convenient in a lot of other ways. It's hard to think of convenience as bad, and I don't think that we need to, actually, but we do need to be aware of how it's changing what it means for us to be human. We know that our ancestors had to hunt and gather and run from saber-toothed tigers and build shelters and climb trees to get a once-a-year taste of something sweet, etc. That was a long time ago, but it was what our bodies are kind of meant for. But even much more recently, just our grandmas and great-grandmas, most of them anyway, maybe you come from royalty or something, which would be super cool, but for most of them, they had to bend and plant and dig and weed and water and carry in order to get food. They had to kneel and scrub and squat and reach and twist. I'm thankful to have the awesome conveniences that we do. I'm glad I don't have to scrub the laundry on a washboard or even wash the majority of dishes by hand. But pretty much 100% of the time, convenient means that the need to move our body has been reduced. Are you old enough to remember having to stand up and change the TV channel with a knob? We had a black and white TV in a back room that was kind of a novelty that was that way, but I'm not quite old enough to remember it being our regular TV. But what about car windows? I remember having to use my arm to crank the window up and down. I remember my dad being disappointed when he bought a new car in the late 90s and it didn't have the option for anything but power windows. He said it was just something else that could break. He'd rather control it himself. Even in just the last 2 years or so, things have changed. It used to be that if I needed groceries, I had to go push a cart around a store for a while and load it all into my trunk. Now I can just tap on my phone a little bit and have it ready for me to pick up, or even have it delivered. It's awesome. It saves a ton of time, but it also eliminates a lot of movement. We're doing some redecorating in my house, and I was shopping online with only the scroll of a trackpad for new window treatments. And I found some that I like that are automatic, so I can just tell Google to open and close the shades or set timers for them. Pretty cool. Getting up to open or close the blinds can even be eliminated. I wouldn't even have to move my finger, just my vocal cords. But just like with all the convenience foods, this convenience has a price, and the price is the same: aging more quickly and developing conditions that could have been avoided. We talked a little bit about this in episode 55 about senescence, but our cells have a certain number of times they can divide, about 50 to 70 times. Some cells stay undead after that time, causing problems in our body. Our daily choices can affect how many senescent cells we have hanging around and causing problems. Our daily choices also affect how rapidly they divide. So some people burn through their allotted number of divisions more quickly than others. You've probably also heard about telomeres before. They're like the end caps on DNA strands. People always compare them to the caps on the ends of shoelaces that keep them from unraveling. If this is new to you and you want to know more about telomeres, submit your idea for the podcast and I would love to talk about them in the future. But our telomeres prevent our DNA from fraying on the ends and becoming so garbled that it's unsafe for cells to keep replicating, which can put an early end to cells being able to divide also. The reason why these things matter is because you can control the rate at which you biologically age. But why I'm talking about it in terms of movement is because Katie Bowman teaches us how moving our bodies in space actually affects the health of our eyes, brains, mitochondria, which means your energy level, lipid panel results, and of course, cardiovascular function, strength, joint health, and bone density. Moving our bodies matters to every cell in our body. Hey, I just wanted to quickly interrupt and say good for you for being here listening to a podcast about improving your biological age relative to your chronological age. Have you ever thought about slowing the biological aging of your skin? If you heard my episode 55 about senescent cells, then you know that the accumulation of these undead cells accelerates all of the problems of aging. Well, now there's a topical supplement you can put on your skin that reduces the accumulation of senescent cells in your skin. This reduces wrinkles, but also all other skin conditions caused by thinner, weaker, drier skin. It also reduces the formation of age spots and increases collagen and hyaluronic acid production within your skin. It's a peptide called OS01, and it's in a product called OneSkin. I use it every day on my face and neck, and I've noticed a big difference. I would say my skin is more moisturized, but that's not a good enough description because it's not like when you put moisturizer on, but your skin is still dry underneath. It's the exact opposite. The topical supplement isn't greasy at all, but my skin is plumper and healthier from the inside out. I'm a big fan. If OneSkin sounds like something you'd like to try, there's a link in the show notes to get you $20 off. All right, back to the episode. Movement is pretty ubiquitous as a thing that prevents almost every single medical issue. And something that Katie Bowman is very big on trying to drive home to people is that moving our body doesn't have to mean exercising. Yes, exercising is good and fabulous, but it's only one very small piece of the pie. We talked about being a sedentary exerciser back in episode 28. If you haven't heard that one, it's a good one about how you can be someone who exercises regularly and still have the same negative effects on your body as astronauts do in space if you sit for the rest of the day. Sedentariness still needs to be abated, even if you crushed an intense workout that same day. You really need habitual movement. Don't stay in the same position for more than 30 minutes in a row unless you're asleep. And it doesn't have to be intense or complicated or time-consuming. But the part I want you to focus on today is not just the whole person state of movement, which we'll think of nutritionally as getting enough calories. Yes, you need enough calories to sustain your health. You need enough movement of your body to sustain your health. But just like you can get enough calories and still get scurvy or pellagra or rickets, you can get enough movement over time and still have a condition caused by a nutrient deficiency. We need to change the shape and load and the location of that load on our body. Katie Bowman explains that first, it's important to eat. Then it's important to think about what you ate and what you eat most often. Do you eat a big enough variety of nutrients? I thought about assigning different foods to different activities and getting really elaborate with it. In my mind, sitting would be bread for sure. That's a no-brainer. And walking would probably be beans, protein, carbs, and fiber all in one. Yeah. Overhead squats might be pomegranates, extremely good for you, but not needed in large amounts. Although I definitely love pomegranates more than I love overhead squats. Maybe overhead squats could be like kale, but I'm kind of sick of people talking about kale. Ooh, how about turmeric? I like that. This is fun. I could keep going, but I'll spare you. One more. Pushing a weighted sled would be garlic. So good for you, but it's a little intense in the moment, and the effects kind of linger for a few hours. All right, I'm done. Ooh, hunching over scrolling on your phone is soda. All right, I'm done. So we know that movement is not just exercise. Exercise is the construct of a very sedentary society. It's more like dietary supplements. We don't get enough nutrients from our regular depleted diet, so we supplement with vitamin swimming or mineral ab wheel or what have you. Ooh, I know I said no more, but a CrossFit type WOD would be a delicious salad because you might get rowing and kettlebell swings and box jumping and pull-ups all in one nutritious meal. Oh, I can't stop. But I hope I'm making my point, which is that just like you can be a sedentary exerciser, you can be a person who moves enough during the day, but is still deficient in shoulder extension or foot arch flexion or knee alignment. And doing just tricep extensions and only tricep extensions is not a well-rounded diet. It would be like just taking riboflavin and thinking you're healthy. Moving is always better than not moving, but moving all of your parts in proper ways is essential because it nourishes your body in a way that nothing else can, including food or supplements. You know that I'm passionate about you having enough energy and staying strong for the people who need you for decades to come. You can do so much more good in the world now and 50 years from now if you aren't encumbered by pain, weakness, or immobility. I see a lot of sweet older people at work every day, and they often say things like, "Here's my advice, don't get old." They're usually talking about pain or immobility or weakness or slowness or imbalance. I'm not blaming them or saying that they or anyone else in their situation did anything wrong. They are great. But it's also not a guaranteed part of aging, the way we are led to believe. It's not an inevitability that we have no control over. In addition to having adequate muscle mass, like we talked about in episode 53, we can do our future selves a huge favor by paying a little attention to the types of movement nutrients we're getting. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate or drastically time-consuming. Just notice what movement you do the most and mix it up a little bit. Maybe do a little of something else that you don't like because you're not good at it. That's so good for you. If you usually walk on pavement, try hiking on an uneven terrain every once in a while. If you usually ride a bike, try swimming. If you usually do yoga, try a kettlebell workout. Also, pay a little bit of attention to what position your body is in most of the time, and take micro breaks to put it in a different position. You already know that you should be changing positions at least every 30 minutes. So do the opposite movement. If you've been stooping forward, arch back and look up at the ceiling. If you've been reaching forward, reach backward. If you've been facing straight ahead, twist to the side. Get down on the floor. Hang from above. All of this will help you to not get locked into a box where you either can't go into your full range of motion or you'll injure yourself if you do. My husband is a physical therapist, so I was asking him some stuff for this episode, and he said I should just have the episode be 5 words. Move it or lose it. Thanks, dear. But it is true. I like Pete Egoscue, if you've ever heard of him. In his book, Pain Free, he says, the human body has 187 joints and more than 600 muscles, and all of them must move or they will quickly lose function. This rule even applies to non-lever joints like those that connect the bones of the rib cage and the vertebrae of the spine. End quote. We know that movement is essential for all of our cells, but it also moves the synovial fluid around our joints, pumps our lymph, and to a certain extent our blood, and moving through our different ranges of motion is what keeps us able to move through those ranges of motion. We need adequate muscle strength and bone density to stay independent and vital. Pete Egoscue talks a lot about movement scarcity, and that it's now starting in adolescence, even childhood. It's big time scary. He estimates that we move about 70% less than our great-grandparents did, and he emphasizes that we need to deliberately introduce supplementary movement into our day to make up for the specific areas where we are deficient. If you never carry weight with your arms directly over your head, you'll stop being able to carry weight with your arms directly over your head. Or you'll get a shoulder injury if you try. The more we move, the more we're capable of moving. The less we move, the less we're capable of moving. Movement was mandatory for survival for our ancestors, but it's mostly optional these days. And when it's optional, even if we're good about not being totally like the people in the floating chairs on WALL-E, we can pick and choose what movements we want to do. And if we pick the same things every time, we're probably becoming deficient in properly loading our hips or stabilizing our back or pushing weight off our chest or whatever. The well-balanced diet approach to nourishing yourself with movement is so important. I hope I've encouraged you to think about motion as nourishing every cell of your body and about getting a variety of foods and supplements to make sure you can still do all the things you want to do for as long as you want to. It can be different for everyone. You might be happy just being able to clean your own house and tie your own shoelaces. You might want to be able to get down on the floor and back up again with your great-grandchildren. You might want to enter a triathlon when you're 80, or be a stunt double for elderly characters in movies or something. I hope that you realize that so much more is possible than we're led to believe, and that mixing it up is fun. It makes movement less of a drudgery type chore. Here's a list of ideas from Pete Egoscue of how to mix things up a bit. Run and walk at different speeds along varied routes. Vary the time of day that you work out. Deliberately work on the 4 halves of the body, right and left, top and bottom. Spend a little time on all the different machines at the gym. Exercise with different people. Change the terrain or the temperature. Try it barefoot. Do it without a soundtrack. No music, no podcast, no noise. Identify the piece of equipment or routine that you hate the most and do it once a week. What would this be for you? I'm not sure I can think of something I really hate, but I'm an uber crappy swimmer. Don't know if that counts. And mountain biking scares me. I went to a Pilates class for the first time in my life today just to try to mix it up. It was fun and I learned some things. Had a hard time not feeling like it was a waste of time to be there, but it was something different and I think that's good. Oh, hill sprints. Those are the worst. How about this, my friend? I'll commit to doing hill sprints this week. If you commit to doing something that you hate too, something really good for you that won't injure you, but that you dislike and don't often do. Do we have a deal? I'll think of you as my lungs are on fire and my legs feel like jello, and I'll smile. It's going to be awesome. I would love to hear what you did to break your pattern. Click the link in the show notes and find my community tab and come tell me what you did. Other people would benefit from it too. I'd love to hear it. I'll leave you with an interesting quote from Pete Egoscue about how the nourishment or malnourishment, as the case may be, of movement affects our foundation of health, which is sleep. This is his opinion, but I think it's something really interesting to consider. Quote, lack of sleep preceded the musculoskeletal pain. It is a result of patterned motion that does not engage the muscles enough to produce fatigue. As muscles lose function, their fatigue threshold rises. They have less need for sleep to re-energize the tissue that isn't expending much energy in the first place. This pattern quickly becomes a vicious cycle of motion deprivation leading to sleep deprivation, causing more motion deprivation the next day, and so on. All the body's systems suffer. We often use food and drink to replace the lost motion stimulus." End quote. I thought that was interesting to think of our muscles down-regulating their need for sleep if they haven't been appropriately fatigued as a thing that messes with our ability to sleep, and our lack of sleep decreasing our movement the next day, causing the perpetuation of the problem. Something to consider. He also talks about movement being both an upper and a downer. It reminds me of Lizzo's About Damn Time song where she says, "I'm gonna need like 2 shots in my cup, one to get up and one to get down." Because movement is both of those shots. Amazing. And that reminds me of a quote from Harvard psychiatrist Dr. John Ratey, who says in his book Spark, that exercising is like taking a little bit of Prozac and a little bit of Ritalin. Movement is awesome for your neurotransmitters and everything else in your body. Just remember to think through all of your different ranges of motion for all of your different parts, and how you can be sure to change body position and load-bearing locations so that you don't develop a nutritional deficiency in one area that can lead to injury or limit your motion in a way that hinders your ability to do all of the awesome things that are still ahead of you. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I appreciate your support so much, and I'm impressed with your dedication to making these small choices today that ensure that you're set up to live drug and disease-free for many decades to come. Next week, we're going to talk about enlivening your experience of life. Until then, eat a variety of movement foods and don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.